Good evening, and welcome to the June 26th, 2000, I'm back in the 1900s, 2013 meeting of Richmond Community Schools Board of School Trustees. Would you please stand for the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, now we are going to have our statement of mission.
Richmond Community Schools' mission is to graduate students who are literate, responsible, proficient in state and national standards, and college and career ready.
Thank you, Aaron. Dixie, the vision statement, please.
By 2020, Richmond Community Schools will be the highest performing school system in East Central Indiana.
And that is the truth. That is what we are all about. It is time for public commentary. Do we have anybody here tonight wishing to speak? No? Okay, we are ready for snapshots of success.
For those snapshots, I would like to call Bridget Hazelbaker to the podium.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'm very pleased to announce that we have our Mentor of the Year here with us tonight. We came up with a great partnership this year. Kim Poinsett, a friend of mine, attended a class through IU East, and we were discussing what kind of partnerships First Bank Richmond and Richmond Community Schools, specifically the mentoring program, could have. And they recommended having a prize for the Mentor of the Year. So Chris Campbell from Westview Elementary School, and I'll pull him up in just a minute, received the award at our mentor banquet. And Kim recommended that with that prize, we'll donate some money to the school that Mr. Campbell volunteers at. So First Bank Richmond sponsored not only the trophies, but also gave money to the mentoring program, and also is giving money in Mr. Campbell's name to Westview Elementary School. So I'd like to go ahead and call up real fast Mr. Campbell and Mr. Clear and Ms. Poinsett from First Bank Richmond. So Mr. Campbell was nominated from the Communities and Schools Site Coordinator at Westview, and what I think that we had 7 nominees from different schools, Communities and Schools coordinators, principals, some of the counselors nominated those for us. And Mr. Campbell was selected because, in the words of his student, he is awesome. Chris also, his student moved around a little bit. So he originally started at Vail, and Chris also works at Hills Pet Nutrition. So Hills is obviously a really great partner at Vail, and even though Hills is also that great partner at Vail, he's decided to follow that student and loop with his student at Westview, and they had a great year this year. So he was surprised, and he brought his family back there also. So Kim Poinsett has this check from First Bank Richmond. This money will be going to Tammy Rhodes at Westview in honor of Chris Campbell for us.
Nice. Very nice.
So
Hold it up high enough.
Do y'all have any questions?
Well, of course.
Of course.
I first met Mr. Campbell when he was a youth coach.
Over here.
Come on. And noticed how patient and kind he was with very, very young guys. Tell us why other people should mentor. I mean, lots of people watch this program, and we need more mentors. Tell them why they should mentor.
Well, I think the biggest thing is just for the kids. I mean, you do it for the kids, but really in the long run, I think you end up getting more out of it, or just as much out of it as the kids do. I actually started mentoring because my wife, when we got together, was mentoring, and she'd been doing that for some time, mentoring and JA, and she talked me into it, and it's been probably the best thing that I've ever done. It feels good because I know before you get started, you wonder, well, what do I have to offer, that type of thing. But it's really fun. Most kids just need that consistency as someone additional other than their parents, and that type of thing, to just show that someone else is interested in.
What was the most rewarding part of your interaction with a student?
Oh. Well, I think really just the fact that there was one week that I had to go out of town for work. And that first day I came back, before I even actually went to see my student, the communities and school person came up and said, "Hey, Bryce has been asking where you at last week," and even though we had that conversation. So just the fact that they're looking looking forward to it as much as you are, and that was really neat. Between that and the fact that we really saw, one of the things that we talked about when I first met him was he really wanted to, and he told me this, I really want to work on my spelling tests and my spelling words, and we started doing that at the beginning of the year, and he really showed a lot of improvement towards the end of the year, so that was really big.
You know, Chris, I have to admit that I didn't make the connection until tonight when I see your mother. And now I have made the connection because you attended Baxter.
Fairview.
Fairview.
Yes.
Fairview. I was thinking Baxter. Okay, so
Fifth grade. Yep.
Fairview. And you know, I would totally expect this from you. And you had a wonderful, wonderful parents to show you the way. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Just want to thank First Bank Richmond again, too, for this great
Yeah,
opportunity.
thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Appreciate that.
All right.
One last thing. All of those people now who are convinced by Mr. Campbell that they should mentor next year, how can they get involved in mentoring? Bridget. Give them the commercial, Bridget.
Well, of course, you can find us on the website at wearerichmond.com. At the very bottom, it says volunteer, and you click on that, and that gets to my email address or my phone number. And then also, we have a Facebook page for the mentoring program, and you can always leave a message on Richmond's Facebook page, Twitter. If you want to leave a message on Pinterest, anything. We'll get a hold of you and get you connected to a... Yeah, we have Pinterest.
Really?
If you'd like to get connected to a student, we would love to have you and use your skills to help our students at Richmond Community Schools.
And the time commitment is,
It's 30 minutes a week.
exactly.
And it's just when school's in session, so you would have Christmas break off, have the summers off.
And I
What
was
can you ask
really
for?
impressed that he said they worked on spelling, because I know that the title sometimes is study buddy, but it seems like we never get to that part. We just,
Right, because you're stuck.
yeah,
Well, and
it's such a small amount of time.
because it's called study buddy. Some weeks you work on studying, and sometimes you work on being a buddy. So it's the kids kind of get dragged down if you're working on studying every time, and it's good to learn to be a buddy too sometimes. All right, thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Bridget. And thanks again, Chris. Congratulations.
And First Bank.
Yes.
And First Bank, yes.
Now, are they on the hook for next year?
They've already signed it.
I should have left before that comment.
Well, we really appreciate that partnership. Thank you so much. That will be put to good use, I'm sure. Always lots of needs. Okay, we are now ready for reports, discussion topics.
Our first discussion topic is the State of the Schools report, which was issued yesterday. I also had another go-around with that this morning at Friends Fellowship with a group of their residents who are monthly attenders of their breakfast meetings. I was their speaker, and so I told them I went through a rehearsal yesterday for them, try to get it right. But I do want to issue a correction that's necessary. In yesterday's presentation, we talked about the end of course assessments, and in the newspaper it was reported correctly, but in my presentation, in my PowerPoint presentation, I had a couple scores transposed. And could we bring that presentation up, the PowerPoint presentation? I just want to make sure everyone sees this and understands how it should be. I'll go ahead and forward it where it needs to be.
Do we have
I'm
these
assuming I can
available
do
for
this.
people this
No, it's
evening,
just
Dr.
the
Borf?
key.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
That's not working either. Okay. Got to be an easier way. There we go. Do you know which one it is, Pam?
Slide
19? That's not it either.
Oh, 19.
You talking about the academic results, or?
There it is. That's it. Okay. Yesterday, we had algebra at 71% and English at 77%, and it really was a significant difference. If algebra had dropped to 71%, it would have been about an 11 percentage point drop. Now, if English had gone up to 77% from 69, it would have been about an 11.5% increase. And I just want to draw this to everyone's attention. Our drop in algebra, end of course assessment, has gained our attention, but it's not as dramatic as an 11% drop. This is a 2 percentage point drop, or about 2.5% drop. English, on the other hand, did go up to 71%. It didn't go up to 77%, but it did go from 69% to 71%, which is almost a 3% increase, and we find that to be noteworthy as well. Of course, on that page, there's some great information. The increase in Ivy Tech credits, 22% increase, is really amazing. And then, of course, we were over 2,000 for total dual credits. So I told Ray Wolpe that I would correct that, and I felt like I needed to do that here with the board.
Did she catch it?
The other piece that I would like to suggest we think about is that yesterday we had a very nice crowd. It was a good group of people, and we were at Crestdale Elementary cafeteria. But we have capacity to serve and to present this to so many more people. And what we would like to do for next year, instead of extending invitations by written form, is to extend an open invitation to the community. And we would have to cap that if we're going to serve breakfast, which is what our tradition is. We would cap that at 150 or 200 people, and after that would be obtained, then we would simply take names and get people later if there were openings. But we had a good message. The message was, actually the message was very effectively covered in the Palladium item today, I thought.
Thought so too.
If you read that article, you don't have to listen to me. The idea is that we had a very challenging year. It was a reorganization year. We had schools that closed. We had staffs that came back together in new ways. We had students who went to different places, parents who had to learn new teachers and principals. Despite that, we had some nice academic gains in almost every area, and at the high school, we had a significant increase in the graduation rate. We think we owe this to a lot of places, but especially to the teachers and the principals who, despite the challenges they had, made it happen for students. We also owe it to the families that worked to make sure it worked for their children. So the PowerPoint is online. if they go to our website, if anyone goes to our website, you can get a copy of the PowerPoint presentation. You may also get a copy of the booklet that has been produced that is State of the Schools. It goes into a few details that I didn't go into in my PowerPoint. And the combination of the two should tell a great story. And if anyone has questions about details or questions about why we didn't include something, we encourage them to contact us by email or to make a call. We had one member of the public today who said he just wanted to come in and talk about this to learn more. And I said that would be
Fantastic.
that'd be great. That's what
That's great.
we open our doors for people like that. So that's my report. I'm open to questions from the board. We didn't really have a chance to talk yesterday during that time.
I thought it was a very thorough presentation.
Honest.
And honest, highlighted our successes, but it also talked about our improvements that need to be made. And so I was very, very pleased, and I am looking forward to an audience from the greater community next year.
I think it would
that
help.
will be
Sure.
beneficial.
I also want to pay special compliments to our environmental services staff for preparing the building the way they did. I don't know if you remember, but at our dedication ceremony, the floors hadn't received some of the attention that they were wanting to give the floor. And part of that is because that building was open while construction was still happening. I mean, right outside the cafeteria was a construction site. So yesterday, it was pretty sparkling.
It was really sparkling. I think we could have eaten off the floor.
I think we could have. So I want to pay special compliments to our environmental services staff and to the staff there at Crestdale for preparing that building for the occasion. Thank you. Our next item is the 2013-14 strategic plan. Now, board members may have some questions or discussion where we're going on that, but what I wanted to do was bring you up to date. My hope was that we would bring the draft of a strategic plan to this board. We've not been able to act as quickly as we had hoped. No one's fault. It's just that we couldn't coordinate some of the personnel that we want to have involved in the process. We have contacted REA, and if Scott Priest were here tonight, as he was planning to be, but informed me just shortly before the board meeting he couldn't be here, you would hear him tell you that they want to be a part of the process, they appreciate being asked, and we're looking for a time to make that happen. So it will be taking place.
Well, summer is a time when people are
Busy time.
vacationing and doing other things.
That's
and
right.
So we understand that.
We also, are you ready to move on?
Yeah. Everybody.
Okay. We also have a Safe Schools, Healthy Students report from Misty Hollis. This is the first in about a 3-phase closeout report. This report is from our outside evaluators, but as Misty will tell you, there's also a financial report that has to come your way, and then also a director's report that shows how we will be responding to the findings of the report that you've been given. But I'll let Misty talk about the reaction as she needs to from just this report.
Well, I first, if I can, just want to talk a little bit about, and I don't want to take a lot of this time, but talk a little bit about the history, because I know there's several of you on this board that were not here, including actually me, when this grant was, when we decided to apply for the grant, and when the grant was applied for, and when the grant was received. So I just want to spend a little time talking about the history, and also we'll invite Kathy Parker if she wants to pipe in just a little bit, because she was the one who authored the grant as well and was a big part of the creation of it. The key of this, I just want to remind you of, is this was a community effort. This was not Richmond Community Schools saying, this is our grant, we're going after it. This was an effort of the partnerships that were created by this school board and by Dr. Borf to not only look at the needs that Richmond Community Schools had, but to also look at the needs that our community had and our kids have when they're in the community in which they live. That's pretty critical when you think about the Safe Schools, Healthy Students grant. The model that the federal government put forth was to see, let's look and see what would happen to education and improvement of education if we start working at outside of our community, invite the community into our buildings as well. So there were 4 pieces and elements of that grant that we as a community needed to respond to and write goals for. The first one was creating a safe environment for in our school. The third was the alcohol, tobacco, and other drug prevention activities, and that is the community piece that we had to address. The third was student behavioral, the social and emotional supports that our student needs, and that also is not only applied in our buildings, but also as a community perspective that we needed to address. And then the fourth was the mental health services, and the last element that was required by the grant was that early childhood support piece. Again, social and emotional support that early learning needs to be directed to, that we need to direct to for early learning. Again, you know, that's not really, that element is not something that we would address from an educational perspective. That's a community, that's from the birth to age 5. But we also know, you've had these conversations, how important that is to address that as early as possible. So it not only, I guess, as we talk about this evaluation report from the third party perspective, think about there are things that have happened in our community, how our community has changed in 4 years, in addition to the improvements that our school system and our students have seen in that period of time. So just want to kind of lay that history down, perspective down as we move forward in the conversation. So that's the history. The first phase that you have received, we have 90 days to close the grant out, and so we receive, the part of the process is you receive a third-party evaluator report, which we have. I have 90 days to respond and have my report of 5-year activity to attach to the evaluator report, and then we also have the financial piece that we report back to the federal government in that closeout. They give us 90 days, but I really want to be done and have this accomplished and moved on. So hopefully 30 to 60 days we'll have that. So I would assume that that piece, my piece, will come back to you in addition to that, what this piece has laid out. So I think basically as you read through, and I don't know if you read all of it, but as you read through, there are pieces that we did accomplish and we did well. There are other pieces that the evaluators clearly said that our goals were probably a little bit too high to attain, and we might have needed to step back. But once those goals were established and we submitted that in the grant, those are the goals that we were to live by. And so even as the evaluator worked with us, when we hired them and we started looking at our baseline data, the evaluator clearly said up front, some of these goals are going to be really, really difficult to meet, especially on the community perspective side. But we had to strive and still work toward that. Overall, I believe with all my heart, and I think the facts show it, that we have seen a tremendous improvement in our school district since 2008. This isn't the only component that we have put into our school system. There have been a lot of components that were added that this board implemented at the same time as this grant was received. But I do believe it was a very critical piece that we had. We implemented the actual grant in January of 2009. Dr. Borf, we were told in 2008, and Dr. Borf went ahead and commissioned and said we need to start some of these services as soon as possible. So the general fund helped fund communities and schools in Centerstone at the beginning of school year of 2008, and then the grant kicked in and started paying those services in January of 2009. So that when we talk about our targets, when we talk about the results, those are the dates that we look at. What is not included in the evaluation report but will be included in my data and my report is the data that you just heard yesterday, because it actually shows more improvements than what we saw from 11 and 12. So I'll be able to celebrate the most recent data that the evaluators weren't able to include into their report as well. The last piece that I really want to just highlight and celebrate you with is the fact that as we looked at data in the last 2 to 3 years, you made a very critical decision in your strategic plan and in your master plan that there was clearly pieces of this grant that needed to be kept to support our kids. Some of those included communities and school support, the mental health support with Centerstone as our contract provider at this point, positive alternatives with Boys and Girls Club, having and keeping Boys and Girls Club at Fairview Elementary School, our school resource officers that we have in place, and support student services staff that we have in place right now. That was pretty critical, and you made those decisions on behalf of our students. And I think, again, since you made those decisions, you saw this past year the success that we've had by maintaining those support systems in place. I think that from our future perspective, we'll continue to evaluate and look at those relationships. We have in place the ability to share the data and look where we are and how we need to move forward. And I've heard loud and clear from you in the strategic plan that you want to keep those partnerships in place and you want to keep those student services in place. So that is our plan. We're going to move forward and respond to what your plan is and your strategic plan has commissioned us to do. So I'll leave it at that and answer any questions that you might have.
Jeff?
Well, I'm glad you give us the history piece, and then, because I had a lot of questions, but I think it's going to be more appropriate for me to wait until, because my first question was, well, where's our director's analysis of this? Mm-hmm. So I think I'll save my questions for that, but I hope we have some time to discuss that, because, the financial piece is it's a report that we're going to have, but I think it's important for us to understand, especially as we move forward, because I went back and we have $302,000 that we said that we want to sustain. Mm-hmm. So I'm interested in, all right, in the last year, because I know a lot of the activities really stepped up in the last year. I think there's a lot more activity, and some of the goals got addressed that didn't get addressed in the earlier years as planned. Mm-hmm. So I'm really interested in the analysis of what you think and what our school system thinks was successful and wasn't, because one of the things I want to kind of have a better understanding for, it's one thing to allocate money and get grants, but it's also another thing to add a program and then embed a program. Mm. So I'd like to, I'll just wait until I get those reports, but I appreciate you giving me that information. So,
yeah, and I do think, take into account how much Richmond has changed environmentally since 2008. There's been some drastic changes in the economy and other factors that we have too.
Dixie and then Pat. Dixie.
Okay. Well, I think too in the report, when you were looking at some of the data, it became very obvious where some of the problems are, like hallways, that we need to pay more attention to, because if you do, then that is also going to cut the suspensions, expulsions, where a lot of that occurs. So there were some things that I think we can look at as a school system and say, hey, this is a problem area. So, and also with the school improvement plans, like the 6th grade suspensions. So it kind of all folds in together.
Mm-hmm. I think it's fair to say that one of the key components this grant has offered that we really didn't do before is deep analysis of that type of data that you just referred to. I mean, this grant provided us a way to ask the kids, where do you feel safe? Where are areas that we need to work on? And that did improve. And it also wrapped into training through our PBIS components, too, of the simplicity of just standing out in the hall during passing period.
Right.
and reminding people how important, if we have the feedback, hallways is a concern. Where are the adults during the time kids are passing periods? And so but we didn't have those tools before, and we have those now that we didn't have before.
Well, it was, and then the report made it very obvious.
Very clear.
So since we have those tools, we should be able to be pretty specific as far as what we want to
To work on.
work on in the future? Would
Yeah,
that
and
be-
they've been worked on every year. I mean, if we talk about the safety, the school safety piece, you can see that definitely improved. And those were one of those pieces, hearing back from the kids at each level, where do we have to work? Where do we need to be? Where are the concerns? So, yeah.
So are you concerned at all about, anytime you have a grant, you have this level of support that is a pretty high level of support. And sometimes when the grant goes away, you don't have the funding to really support that highest level of support. So are you concerned about being able to maintain those?
I think that's a great question, Linda, and I appreciate it very much. The answer is yes and no. I mean, yes, I think you're right. When you have dollars that you can allocate to security cameras at test, and that wasn't something that was built into the budget. We had dollars available in the grant, and we were able to get extra cameras for them. Same at Dennis. We don't have those tools as we did before. However, I think it makes us look at what our priorities are, and when budgeting happens, we address it through the budgeting process. And then secondly, look for additional partners that we need to ask those dollars from. What other grants are out there, or what other support systems can we get, financial support that we can get. One of the pieces I know through the PBIS feedback over and over and over again from the buildings related to funding their positive behavior components. If we need to give pencils, if we need to give stickers, if we're going on a field trip, how is that funded? Well, I know that there are some conversations right now with a private foundation that would help put some things in place, some funding in place for those buildings. So it's yes, to answer your question, yes. But I think it also holds our feet to the fire for accountability and ensure that we're still meeting the needs of our students in our buildings as well.
Pat?
My concern, as I've been intimately involved with the grant through the CPY, the Countywide Partnership for Youth, as we come to this point, we have a lot of partners for whom this grant was extremely important financially. And I am concerned not only about what happens within Richmond Community Schools, but how can we see that communities in schools and Boys and Girls Club, because I've heard Jennifer O'Brien say Fairview's results this year she directly ties to, or at least partially directly ties to the Boys and Girls Club. So as we move forward, we need to think about those partners, and that's a very efficient and effective way of doing some of the things and providing many of the services. If we had to do it out of our own pocket, doing communities and schools would be much more difficult than it is. So as we go forward, we have to ask ourselves, what are the most important services, and how can we even speak for those partners maybe to help get more support, because I am concerned. And one thing I do want to say, a little correction, it wasn't 2008. We started talking about this in 2005, and when you think about the difference between 2005 and 2013 in Richmond and in public education, because that was even before the transfer and the charter law. I mean, it really was before the current environment. So we've been thinking about this in a whole different, almost a decade.
If I can just plug the mayor allowed a request to go to city council to support communities and schools at the level, I think it was $50,000. And again, that, Mrs. Morrison, that's a partnership. That's a new endeavor that's never been there before, but the mayor heard and responded to the need of continuing to have CIS in our buildings. And so while our funding source with the general fund couldn't support all of it, having that additional dollars did ensure that we're going to have somebody in every building.
Good.
So
Great.
those are just additional partnerships to think about.
One other question. As you prepare your report, how will that report be reflective of our staff and their involvement and their perceptions, and or will it?
Are you on our Facebook?
Maybe I should ask.
No, I think that's fair to ask that there will probably be some blunt components of that, of the challenges at the beginning of the buy-in, but the way to celebrate how that did change as time went on. So yeah, it'll be in there.
Well, I just thought that their perceptions and thoughts might help us as we plan, for the future, obviously.
Oh, you're meaning getting feedback from them in addition to.
Or have you,
I'm not. I haven't been required to do that,
Okay.
but I can talk to Dr. Borf on how we might be the best method to do that. Yeah.
As we look back on this whole grant process, one of the nice pieces of this was to have our director at the cabinet level. I thought at the beginning that it was probably a good practice, and we were told nationally that was an effective model. But I'm not so sure we could have put some of the pieces in place as quickly as we did, or integrate them as well as we did, had it not been for the fact that she did come on, and Misty has worked with at our cabinet level ever since that point. And so we've been able to integrate. When we've needed some funding pieces, we've been able to turn to our finance. If it's a human resources issue, it's been discussed right there, or special needs. Special needs has a critical piece in the Safe Schools, Healthy Students approach because of the RTI process. This is very, very closely woven together. And so as we look at what this grant has done, I like to talk to people about, we used to have our charts up there. I'm not sure where they are right now, but they used to be up there, and I could show them. In 2008, we were here, and now we're here. What happened in 2008, 9? We've been on an upward trajectory that's been pretty steep ever since then, at all the levels. And so I have to believe that Safe Schools, Healthy Students activities and strategies had something to do with that. It wasn't the only piece, as was mentioned earlier, but it was a significant piece.
thank you.
Thank you.
We also have a report tonight on our high ability program. There was a report filed, and we have Gwen Gibbs with us, who is our director of high ability programs, and I would like to turn it over to her just to highlight some of the elements of her report and maybe to field questions that you may have.
Well, I came prepared to answer questions, but I can very quickly, you can see in your document, we did some review this year of some of the major components that you look at with high ability education, the first being identification. We did have our process reviewed, and we feel like we're going to be able to put some things in place that will get us closer to a more excellent way. I've been doing this for several years now, and identification is just an ongoing work to make it match what is needed at the State Department. It's a multifaceted system. We identify for potential, for achievement, and then also more qualitative, behavioral kinds of ways that students operate. And we're using those. Our probably biggest weakness is having a good model or a good tool to use for the achievement piece. And that is because the achievement tools that we use right now in assessing are grade-based, and they don't really measure out of grade levels, so we can't see what a child's achieved beyond. And so we're going to try to put something in place to improve that. Any questions about that identification part?
No, I just wanted to suggest that you give us an overall picture of what the high ability program looks like in Richmond Community Schools, because I know it's gone under lots of changes.
Right.
And so in order to inform the board and also the public, I just think that would be very valuable information for you to share with us.
Okay, well, I'll go big picture then. What we've tried to do in Richmond is create a continuum of services for our high ability students. In the past, I can think years back, when you said high ability education, you thought immediately logos and pull out, and that served a fairly narrow band of students. And we have tried to, and through the state has required now that we identify students in math, language, and general intellectual, and that we serve those students, and that we identify students kindergarten through 12th grade. And so that has led to a lot of work with our identification program and then how we serve students. So we've maintained the self-contained logos program for now it's really 5th through 8th grade at the Hibbard building. Our pull-out services have undergone some changes. From many years ago, we had a full-day pull-out program, and that was changed to providing the services in-house in the buildings, and that reduced the number of hours per week the students had. And with the renovation at Hibbard and the space that was available, and we thought we could get the busing taken care of, we were able to offer a full day again for our students. One of our big concerns has always been representing all of our demographics, and so we have for quite a while offered a 4th designation in our identification, which we called Aspire, and it doesn't get counted by the state, but it's those students who may not perform well on standardized tests, but the teachers see that there's potential there. And so we have provided the pull-out services for them, and then by the time we got to 5th grade, well, now it's 4th grade, before they go into a self-contained program, they participate, and then we go through more extensive testing again to make sure that they're ready for a more challenging program in the Logos Lab. But we don't want to forget that at the elementary level and the middle school level, and then of course all the offerings at the high school, we're serving the needs of high ability students. Test and dentists are serving the needs of high ability students. They very readily move their kids through math coursework when they're ready to move on. If a student's ready in 7th grade to take algebra, they're pretty good about moving them through that. The elementary level, we've started LEAP groups, so students have that time every day to work at a higher level with their reading and with their math, and even during the stations time. Teachers are aware of their students who have the extra ability, and they're providing for them in class. So it's not just relying, and really our pull-out program has definitely become an acceleration program. Or not acceleration, I'm sorry, enrichment. It's, yeah.
So Aspire is for what grade levels?
Well, at this point, it's for K through 4.
And that Aspire is a pull-out program. Do they stay in their home school, or do they travel to Hibbard?
They might travel. It gets very complicated. They might travel to Hibbard, but it depends on their functioning within the classroom, because we didn't want to pull kids out and miss a day of their regular instruction if they're struggling at, even 80. I think we said our cutoff was to be 85. We'll probably have to bump that up to 90%. But we have good solid testing going on a weekly basis, so the teachers can see, are the students mastering what they need to? Can they learn in 4 days what the other kids need 5 to learn, basically?
So if they can, then they are transported to Hibbard?
Right.
Okay, and then the regular high ability is from 4th grade at Hibbard. It will be from 4th grade through 8th grade?
Well, actually, it'll be from 3rd grade.
Third grade.
To 8th grade. So some of the students who were served 1 day a week will now have a full-time program, a full-day program.
Okay, so that's 3rd through 8th grade.
Right.
And
Still Wings. There's Aspire and then Wings,
okay,
right? Is Wings going to happen this year?
Wings will happen for the 1st through 4th grade students who are not in the full-time program.
okay.
Because we'd be duplicating services, essentially, and we don't need to do that. So,
Okay. So where does Wings take place? Does it take place at the building level?
it will still be at Hibbard.
Oh, it will be at Hibbard.
It will be at Hibbard.
Okay. And then at the high school, is that kind of a resource effort, or how are they served at the high school?
By high school, they take coursework that matches their ability. So they would start out in honors, they can go into AP. That's basically, they accelerate, as is appropriate through the math coursework.
So about how many students do you think we are?
Well, the state pulled the data on the I'm trying to, I guess.
612, I think it says.
Right.
12%.
12%, and that varies by grade level. Yep.
Because that's the state definition of high ability, because I thought it was a much lower number. I thought it was like 3 to 5% or something.
I remember years ago hearing that, like if you were going to do self-contained services, it would be for that 3 to 5%. But I don't hear them saying, I think when I went to the meeting where I got this data from the state, they said that in districts generally 4% is a minimum. And I think our graph here was pretty consistent. It was like a really, it looked like a pretty normal range compared to the other places.
Pat?
As I read the report, 2 things jumped out at me that I think we as a board need to think about and consider. And one of them we've already started talking about. In all of our community and staff meetings, people said kids need a pathway, that they need to know the opportunities. And you identified, especially as kids get ready to go into high school, that they need to have, they don't understand and aren't aware of all the opportunities. I just thought that affirmed and confirmed both words of what we have been talking about, needing to get that pathway with all of the opportunities articulated for kids. The question that raised for me is back to advising for kids and how we can advise kids on the continuum. How do you do that for high ability? Are you the one person who has consistent contact with kids and parents, or do we have an identified advising cadre for these high ability kids?
I don't think it's been as intentional as it needs to be.
Well, we keep saying it needs to be intentional for everybody, but this report really brought that to mind for me as well.
And that came from a broad-based planning committee meeting where I asked, after some discussion, and I gave people Post-its and said, what do you think we need to be working on? And that was overwhelmingly the thing that
We've heard that over and over.
So if I have a child in the high ability program, let's say at Hibbard, in the self-contained, how might the instruction be modified for high ability students?
And in the Logos program, probably the most significant, I see more emphasis probably on process than content, and a lot of personal responsibility in providing time for students to explore a passion. And many students do their projects that they end up going into those fields, so it's a good experience for them. That's probably a lot of it. They do simulations. It's not as, I see the distinct difference between the early college, and we have identified kids in early college too, and they have a little more of a traditional model of mastery of the material, and then Logos has a different model that emphasizes students learning what they want to learn. And I think there has to be a balance. You know, we're working through that a little bit with the staff.
My other question had to do with AP. You know, Notre Dame has given us this grant for AP, and it's not just for high ability kids, it's to get more and more kids into rigorous coursework. So how, and I don't even know quite how to frame this question. Want to make sure that high ability kids know, is it an expectation, I guess, let's just come out with, that they take AP classes?
I asked Dr. Karen Kimball at the high school to pull the data for me.
Saw a lot of that.
Well, and this was, she gave me names of kids who were taking those AP classes and passing them, and I'm wondering if
I thought that
our
was
students,
paltry.
yeah, I'm wondering if if our high ability students are getting into the AP classes, or if they're choosing not. I'm not sure, and
that
not
really
sure.
disturbed me, quite frankly. The number of high ability students in the ninth grade was 55. Of course, that ninth grade I don't think should count, but junior year, 51 high ability students and only 13 that took an exam. I mean, that for me was a red flag. And so, will the weighted grades help that?
Well,
That's a political question.
Going to jump in there and say something. There are several questions I want to deal with here, but we'll deal with that one first. The weighted grading system has a purpose, and the purpose is to incentivize
Sure.
and to reward students for additional work. And I will hold not only parents responsible and students responsible, but also colleges responsible somewhat for putting students in the position of having to determine, is it more important to have an excellent GPA,
right.
or is it more important to learn what really I need to know in order to be successful in the future? And they are at that point where it's a very difficult thing to balance. So the weighted grading system, I think, is designed to give them something to tip that balance a bit, so that they're serving their both interests, the GPA plus the learning needs. But I also want to address another question that you raised, Pat, and that was with the awareness. How do we become aware of what opportunities are out there when we're in this particular high ability group? And what I'm going to be proposing to you, we just had Communities and Schools cut a position at Hibbard through the budget process. It just became obvious that something had to go, and that was the position. I'm going to be recommending, I don't know whether I'm recommending the same person or not, but I will be recommending that we reinstate a staff member, not to do Communities and Schools work, but to do college coaching.
Yeah,
It really needs to start at the
I
fifth
agree.
grade
absolutely.
and move through there, because there are opportunities to start planning our courses and our direction. And my thought is that this person would not only work, they'll be based at Hibbard, and the primary work would be at Hibbard, but this person would also be working to get into Denison Test and work with those students, but also perhaps help transition 8th graders into the high school to make sure that we don't drop anything in the process. I have
Alan-
talked to too many students recently who don't understand that there are early admissions exams, early admissions opportunities
Absolutely.
at some of these colleges, scholarship competitions.
Yep.
And we need to have someone specially directed to help them through that
And look
process.
at the numbers in the high school. The number of high-ability students identified is 153 in our high school. And basically, we have Dr. Kimball, who kind of works with them. That's almost impossible to do. I thought, do we need that kind of a person at the high school as well?
I think that person may very well change what we do at the high school.
Absolutely.
So more of that happens.
Well, and to me, it was obvious that when they got to the high school, it's kind of like another transition problem, that they weren't recognized, weren't picked up, or weren't advised the right way to continue what they need to be doing at the high school level. Because a lot of those kids, I don't know what happened to them. It's like, you know, you're asking the question, what happened?
Well, we saw this closely at Hibbard this year with our 8th graders, because we have the early college and then we have logo students, and it wasn't a given that the early college kids were to go. We had kids who were ready, you know, they should have been on an AP track. And so that whole idea of multiple pathways and understanding whatever program you're in, we need to help you understand what your gifts are and what your skills are and where you need to head yourself when you get over to the high school.
Well, that
That's
confirms our conversations.
When
that
I
we
read
had.
this report, I thought, why? Because it really was another view of the same question.
Anybody else have any?
I have a question that Kelly always asks. The 3rd and 4th grade classes at Hibbard, we're assuming those are from across the district. The makeup of those classes are not just the one elementary, because we had parents who, are they made up of students from across the district?
Yes.
I need to say that loudly and clearly, because we've heard,
Well, I have heard that the majority are coming from Charles, and that may be true, but I just want to make sure that everyone has the opportunity to be in that program, no matter what school they're in. And also, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Well,
after you answer
we
that.
needed to provide for 2 classes at Charles. Now, I did do the math, and if you combined the Garrison and Charles populations and took the percentage of the district that the kids there typically get identified, it's pretty comparable to what it is. But it's worked out to be about 2/3 Garrison, Charles, and then 1/3 students from the other areas. But I haven't felt like I've had to say no to a child who really needed the services.
When you go to identify children for high ability, does that come from the teacher? Does that come from a test that the teacher has given? Does that come from a request from the parents?
It can come in all those ways. This year, we retested a lot of the Charles kids, just to make sure that we were in a good place with who we were bringing. The kids in the other areas, we looked back at, we didn't go back and retest all the kids in all the buildings, but we went back and looked at their entry scores, and we asked the pull-out teachers who'd been working with them what their performance was like, and we identified the students that appeared to be most in need of the service.
Thank you.
Well, I was just going to say, but also for the 3rd and 4th in the report, just so the public knows, that also has been increased now to 72 students for those 2 grades.
yeah.
So it's not just 24 for each grade level like
Right.
it was last year.
Oh, that's a good point, too.
Yeah, I
So
noticed.
that has been increased by another whole class, so.
Yeah,
I think that's exciting.
yeah, we're excited. It'll change the dynamic over there a little bit. But
I bet it would.
But you know what? It will also give the older students experience in helping the younger. I mean, I can really see some benefits of those.
For me, I had to figure it out because some of the staff was a little apprehensive. You know, we're a middle school and we got these elementary, but half of my experiences in education, half my years have been in schools that were K-12, K-9, K-8. So for me, it's like, what's the big deal?
Right.
You know, it's a great environment, so I think it'll be good.
Good.
Thank you very much.
Well, thank you for directing me on how to go about this. I would have been up here all night.
I was just excited to read that it does confirm the kind of questions and discussions we've had, and I think it lights a fire under us to make sure we get that pathway and that we get some more of those coaches for all kids to identify their gifts and work.
Okay, we are ready to move toward action items.
And for our receipt of donations, we turn to Mr. Coddington.
Thank you. Tonight we ask the board to accept the following donations, and we have quite a few, and it might take a while. From Elaine Barnes, Pete and Nancy Beeman, Jack and Barb Belfus, Richard Boddicker, Daryl and Elsie Bragg, Anthony and Dorothy Broadwell, Jean and Wanda Burris, Ron and Rhonda Christopher, Joe, Rachel, and our good friend Esther Etherington, Liz Gazelle, Connie and Roger Green, Lonnie and Sherry Hart, Joyce Harder, Grover and Dorothy Henthorn, Tom and Ann Herman, Don Hilbert, David and Sherry Jetmore, David and Ellen Johnson, Kenneth and Patricia Jordan, John and Janet Kaufman, Joanne Lawrence, Tim and Ellen Love, Michael Maines and Bobby Carter, David and Phyllis Marling, Doris Ellen Miller, Gloria Mueller, Charles and Marilyn Ramey, all to the Civic Hall Performing Arts Center for the proudly presenting annual giving campaign. From Kathy and Lowell Robinson, Monica Koschlein, Anonymous, Ted to the Community Partnership Engagement Office for our mentoring program. From Ted and Jackie Black to Charles Elementary School for Mrs. Bratton's music class. From West End Bank, Charles Elementary and Hibbert Intermediate for T-shirts for students and teachers participating in the Chinese program. Hills Pet Nutrition, DeVale Elementary School for COPE membership, good behavior parties, and a document camera. From Ray Wolpe to RHS for the Kickoff Mentoring Program. DeVio and Judy Chamberlain to RHS for donation to Student in Need Fund. From Dr. Brad Barrett and Tim and Lisa Schultz to Richmond High School Athletics, donation to the Boys Golf Camp Fund. From David Brown, Richard Pugh, John Hitch, Troy and Marilyn Ingram, Ron L. McLean Sr., Freeman Planning and Design, Lindley S. Mann, Dr. Brad and Marianne Barrett, First Bank Richmond, A House Tool and Engineering, Kyle and Beth Ingram, Spurrier's Auto Body, all to RHS Athletics and donation to the Boys and Girls Golf Camp Fund. We thank these people and ask you to accept the donations of $8,283.50.
I so move.
Okay, we have a motion by Jeff Slifer, seconded by Kelly Baumgartner. Comments or questions, other than thank you, thank you, thank you?
Continue to have an amazing community, that's for sure.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried.
Thank you.
For our next action item, we have an agreement to be approved with West End Bank, and this is to continue their work with us on the agreement begun years ago at Garrison, but has been extended to include so many of our buildings. There are two exhibits on here, actually one exhibit, but there's the agreement and there is the exhibit that goes with the agreement. My recommendation is that you approve the 2013 2014 West End Bank Agreement as presented, as posted to the web. We do have a representative from the bank tonight if you have a question.
Okay, do I have a motion?
So move.
Motion made by Pat Heine,
Second.
seconded by Suzanne Darengowski. Comments or questions?
We have two representatives.
Yes,
Didn't realize that.
I was going to say.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Now, welcome.
Thank you. I just wanted to say briefly, we couldn't be happier with the arrangement. We really think we're having a positive impact on the students. Many parents approach us. They're thrilled with the program, too. We have parents of third graders asking what the application process is for their fourth graders to be tellers. Many of the seniors that work here at the high school branch have continued their employment with West End after graduating high school. So we just think it's an opportunity all the way around. Robin?
Thank you, Tim. One of my favorite stories was a fourth grade student who sent us a little card after visiting the bank for a field trip. We share our employee meeting with them. They give the statistics for their branch. Then they also go to the East Side office where they shadow tellers. And the child sent us a little thank you note and said, "Thank you for letting me work here." I was like, "Do you want to be hired permanently?" But it's really a joy to work with these students and providing financial literacy opportunities for them to understand the responsibility of money, how to handle it, and use it responsibly. So we're very excited to provide this program and looking forward to working with our students in 2013 and 14.
Well, I can assure you that we're just as happy as you are. And we just thank you so much for providing this opportunity for our students. It is wonderful.
You know, oftentimes we overlook what we do here as just the way we do business, and we don't see it as exceptional. But as time goes on and we just bring out in conversation with other educators around the state and nation that we have this or we have that, this program has received a lot of questions from people who have absolutely nothing like it. Because financial literacy is one of the hottest topics in education right now. My question that you might want to think about and maybe take back to John McBride or whatever is your willingness to join us in a presentation either at a state conference or a national conference.
I think that would be great.
This is a prize-winning program, and I think we need to let others know how it's put together and what it can do.
I would say the answer is yes.
Pretty safe, that one, huh?
It would be great fun to take some of the youth tellers as they...
A couple of tellers.
Well, and we keep talking about program, but I love that slogan, so I think we need to keep saying, we are savers. So.
And we are savers who get a higher interest rate. I was just wondering if you...
We will start planning. We'll start planning a
Excellent.
presentation.
Very good.
Okay.
Good.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Our next item is a little on the unusual side, but I'm pleased to bring it to your attention tonight. We have a sabbatical request from Latricia Jackson. Sabbaticals are not common in public education. This is an unpaid sabbatical. Latricia Jackson is one of our early college teachers. She's an excellent, superb teacher. And she has an opportunity to teach in a Department of Defense school in England. And she has been offered that position. It was just offered to her, but she has to make that determination very quickly. And she also has an enduring commitment and love for Richmond Community Schools and the Richmond community. She doesn't want to sever ties, and so she has asked for a sabbatical. Now, a sabbatical is generally a term that's applied to a period of rest or study, research. she's doing a little more than just that, because at a Department of Defense school, she will be a teacher, but they're also training her in advanced placement in her area. It is a time of learning. She's branching out just a little bit. This is students not just middle school age, but also high school. Very well could be a 2-year commitment on her part, but she is asking for a 1-year sabbatical. And we'll see it next year, what the status is of her arrangement, but she feels like it would be important for her to maintain this connection. So I'm recommending, and my recommendation is part of the contract requirement. Scott Priest, as president of the REA, is also by contract required to recommend to you a course of action. We both recommend that you approve her sabbatical leave request.
Nice.
Okay, I need a motion. Pat Heine, seconded by Dixie Robinson. Comments?
I really hate to not have her here, that there are
So do
students who will not have her, but what an opportunity. Could we put in this motion that she has to write back monthly and tell us what's going on? Or,
You know
or
what?
Skype with us?
She's planning to Skype. She's planning to Skype with students at the Early College Academy.
Nice.
Well, and she's also planning to enhance what she does in social studies by travel while she's there.
That's true.
She's
Sure.
going to do
Right.
quite a bit more than just
Nice.
teach at the different.
She's an amazing. I'm just watching her. You're just enthralled with.
She is a fun teacher to watch. I agree.
Is their school year the same in England as ours? Do we know
We'll
that?
find out.
She said they begin the end of August, so it must be somewhat comparable in terms of starting.
Now, you also should know she's traveling to China in a couple weeks for us, and she's doing one of the English camps for Chinese students, as are five other teachers. She was willing to step away from that because she felt like she was reneging on a commitment of ours, and we were putting her in that camp for a reason. But we've asked her, I mean, that's how important her work is. We've asked her to go ahead.
Yeah. Nice.
We think it's good for our team going over there, as well as for the students who will be exposed to her, so she's happy to do that as well. Mrs. Stewart, did you want to present anything in conjunction with this request?
No, it'll be.
It's on the addendum.
On the consent agenda.
Okay, all right.
Well, we certainly wish her the best, and we are willing to share her for a short period of time.
Underline share.
Yes.
That implies she's coming back.
Yes. So all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried.
Our next item has to do with our school improvement plans. I turn to Dr. Parker for presentation of these school improvement plans. You might want to give them the full background on this request tonight.
Yes, these are draft copies of the school improvement plans. The Department of Education changed the rules about when we submit those a couple years ago, and so we submit them to the DOE by September 15th, and they changed that when we started doing more and more online testing, and we could get our ISTEP scores back in a more timely fashion, except for this year. So that we could update our school improvement plans to include that latest off-the-press data in which to help craft the goals and set the strategies. And so when they did that, they neglected to change the statute that said the school board had to approve the plans. They'd be presented to the school board in June. And so that's why I bring them to you. But once we get the ISTEP scores, and once you've done some update of the strategic plan, the schools will be reviewing those, making some changes, and they'll be submitted to you in September when we submit them to the DOE.
Okay, so we don't have to. Can I ask you questions?
Sure.
So we make the motion first, don't we?
Do we have to make a motion first? I was just waiting for that.
You do have to make a motion.
Okay, then I'll do that.
Okay, motion made by Pat Heine,
I'll second that.
seconded by Kelly Baumgartner. Now, questions and comments.
I did not read all of every one of them, but I did pick and choose and read a lot. What I'm most concerned about was the connection between the school improvement plans and the things you brought up yesterday, such as attendance and that piece of behavior and what we learned from the Safe School, Healthy Students. And I know this is just this we have to go through. It's a mandated thing, and I guess I want to go on record saying I want more connection between that and what we learned in terms of about attendance and behavior and what we learned from the Safe School, Healthy Student implications, especially for the suspensions and expulsions and all of that. And I don't know what to do with that concern, but to voice it.
I don't think it's uncommon for them to overlook in their plan that connection when they're obligated to have the PBIS meetings on a regular basis. I think they overlook documenting that when it's part of their DNA right now to review the data on a weekly basis and make in-flight changes.
And they do all have goals.
Yeah, they do.
That address that.
But I think the intentionality of the connection is a good piece. And as Kathy said, this is a draft form.
I know.
We can mold that or meld that into the new form.
And as we've been saying, we've made great leaps and bounds. The next percentage points are going to be a real struggle, and we're going to have to make those through the intentional connections with attendance and behavior, because those probably are the kids who aren't making the leaps and bounds that we need.
And we're trying to build a template here for them to follow. We can even tweak that template so that becomes something that's a little more upfront in the thinking. We can talk about that.
Yeah, and we built it around the strategic plan originally, and the strategic plan has changed somewhat, and will change more. If you'll recall, at one time, we asked them to write their goals at 100%. And so this year, last year, actually, we backed them to the 90% because that was the board goal. And we took their baseline data and we created the trajectory. And so I assumed this year when I got their improvement plan drafts that they would have updated their goals based on what they had from their But some of them said they're going to find out where they are this year and redraw their trajectory. Now, that's not how I would have done it, but then I stopped to think about it and thought, well, that makes perfectly good sense to say, this is where we are at this moment in time. This is where we need to be by 2020. What am I trajectory? And so kind of constantly updating that every year so that they have a goal every year. It'll be different. So
I guess the plans to me just felt like this goal was this silo, and this goal was this silo, and this goal was here, and not the connecting the dots that we keep talking about, and not connecting to some of the things that you brought up yesterday. So the intentionality, that would help that concern.
Okay, Dixie?
Well, and when we were talking about the Safe Schools, Healthy Students grant, and some things just kind of leaped out at you. So when I was reading through the school improvement plans, you have 12th grade attendance leaping out at you.
Gee.
That was very disturbing. And so you wonder, that's an area we've got to fix now. 6th grade suspensions.
Yep.
And some academic problems in certain areas. So, it's you really, once you look at the big picture, the problem areas they're just there. They hit you right in the face. So I think that's something we need to pay attention to.
And maybe then what I'm now articulating my concern a little more that you bring that up, Dixie, is that they have every right to just look at their building, and we're looking at the big picture. And so how to tie those all together.
Okay, anyone else?
That's a good point, Dixie.
Okay, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Now we're ready for the 2020 vision.
And we have a project update that Mr. Mays is going to present that I think will be almost fun to watch.
Lots going on.
The fun is, remember, I drive by there every
nice.
day.
Yep,
That
that's going to be beautiful.
Kathy, would you hit these lights right here?
Okay. We'll start off with Dennis. We talked about the arch.
Yeah.
That's what we uncovered when we were demoing in some new doorways in. and that used to be an opening into some restrooms when the building was originally built. This is the main corridor, and you can see that we have ceilings out. Most of the demo is done, and we're putting things back together. The men working there on the left, they're actually working on a new doorway right here that comes from the office, because that wall right there will have a new pair of doors that the parents won't be able to get beyond, or the public beyond those doors, and they'll have to come in the office, they'll do their transactions, and let them go into the main building, and they have to come through those doors right there.
Okay.
Now, in the morning, those doors will be unlocked for students to enter the building, but probably by 8:30, 9 o'clock, they will be locked. But to bring you up to date on Dennis, we're 100% completed on the demolition. The metal studs walls are 100% completed. Drywall's 90%, plaster's 97%. Classrooms right now are being painted, both on the first floor and second floor, and they have final coats of paint on them. Wow. We're installing casework in the classrooms on the second and first floor, and they started carpet today on some classrooms on the second floor. And the goal is to have those rooms ready in about 2.5 weeks, so that John Hamilton and his crew can move and get those classrooms on the second floor ready while we're down working on the first floor. But Dennis is on schedule. They worked Saturday and Sunday to keep on schedule last weekend, and I'm sure they'll continue to do that. This is looking from Northwest 8th Street, looking up the bus drive. You can see that we had to put a sewer line right here, and the rough grading is done. You can kind of see how the walk will be coming up there, and the buses curb right here, and that's what they started today. The walk and curbs and preparation of putting stonework up there, and you can, if you go up on top, you can see where we've made the existing parking lot bigger, and we're changing the curb lines driving into the parking lot so the buses can enter in properly. So that is also on schedule. DeLucio's doing the excavating work, and Milestone is doing the asphalt work. At Charles, this is two of the four classrooms on the east end of the school. Now, what I want to show you here is the openness between the classroom on that end and the classroom here, so that this is what we've done at all of the classrooms on Charles, so teachers can collaborate. Their desk will be right here for that teacher, and right here for this teacher. And we put new walls up here. We put new drywall in here and sinks, and the computers will be along here. And then along this wall here is where we will put new cabinets. And what I want you to know that the demolition, the metal studs, drywall, ceiling, grid repair were all done by the Warner staff, and high school construction technology students helped with the drywall and the demolition and so forth. The policy that we had last year, we continued over into this year. And that John Hamilton is telling me that they should be done in 3 weeks, which is going to be a couple weeks before the August 2nd completion date. This is another shot of the classroom. Just wanted you to see the bulkheads that they've had to build, and the walls, and this area right in here. This is where the preschool is going to be. This has been a community room. Last year it was a room for art, because we needed the art room as a classroom. What they're doing here is taking up the carpet. As you can suspect, the art students weren't too friendly with the carpet, so we've had to take that up. You can see right here this white line. This is an opening that we're going to put in this wall with a door and frame that goes into the restrooms. There's one set of restrooms that we'll close off so that we will have restrooms right off of this preschool room for those students. We'll lock the restroom doors on the other end so that they will have privacy, because to them it will be a unisex restroom. We're looking at putting a smart board on this end of the room and computers along here. But we'll get new carpet, new cabinets. This picture doesn't show, but it goes on to the south, and there'll be cabinets right in there with a sink lower down to their level.
Is that right across from the cafeteria?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Those restrooms right across from the cafeteria. And when you walk in the main doors, the door inside the vestibule is the door. It's right about here.
Oh, okay.
That you can go into that room.
So you have a private entrance?
Yes, 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 yes. Here at Hibbard, I know that before we started doing this work, it was hard to relate to the Ron Robinson Memorial, because we had these two columns here and some brickwork, and it's hard to see how that was going to work together. What they have now is this walkway and steps, which is the second stage from what we did at the parking lot above. So we'll be able to park in the parking lot, come down these steps, and into the main part of the building. Then parents will come, we're widening this entrance, and they'll come in here and they'll drive around a loop that comes right around here and drop their students off there and then right back up again.
Right, Dixie?
That was needed 20 years ago.
It was needed when the place was built, guys, in 1977.
It never really had a front door.
No.
That's right.
And so Runnels...
ready this fall?
Yes, Runnels Excavating is doing this, and Milestone, we're just a little bit ahead of schedule here, as we are on the other one, and yes, this will be done by the start of school.
That's great.
With that being said, at Charles, we were going to put a parking lot there. Okay, that parking lot is going to start next month, because the main excavators are here and at the high school and at Dennis. And I felt that we could be a little late on the parking lot at Charles, but we cannot be late here, and we cannot be late at Dennis. So it's suffering maybe a month at Charles.
This may not be the time to bring it up, but the entrance there is kind of bland.
We have a allowance in there for landscaping.
And what about plants or something inside the?
Oh,
she's talking about.
You're right. That needs.
It's
that needs
bland.
to be done. Yes, 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 yes.
Can you say that again?
What was your opinion? Your opinion was bland, right?
Bland.
What you don't see here is going to be really interesting. There's an island right in here. This is at a higher level, and so you'll step down into this area here, because we're built on a hillside.
Right.
And we've got some landscaping in here, and we also have some decorative lighting in here for the parking lot.
Nice.
So it's really going to take shape when we do that.
It really will look like a front door
Will
now.
that cut out some of that wind tunnel effect there at the front door?
It could. It could.
Especially if you did the proper landscaping.
Yes, yes, yes.
And it wasn't bland.
I meant the inside.
Well, when we go buy the plants, I'm going to ask you.
Now, I will buy a ficus tree or something like that to put in.
The Pat Heine ficus.
I don't know about that. But you know what I mean. When you go inside the door, there's this lovely blue carpet, but there's just an empty
There's nothing
space.
there. Yeah, you're right.
And it either needs a bench or something like that.
And we are putting
figured
some
they just
benches
weren't
here,
finished
but
yet.
it does.
I've asked them that about 10 times, and nobody seemed to think they had a plan for it.
He's there tomorrow with a plant.
The other
I will
thing,
buy a ficus.
Now, Pat, before you do that, we might want to turn to the students at that building and see if they have a plan.
I think that's a great
They
idea.
might.
And you know what? Let's let them have a plan.
And they might come to you for a ficus tree. I don't know.
I'm sure some of them will. I think I see
As
some
the
of them.
armchair.
the other part of Hibbard is the HVAC unit ventilator replacement. New boilers. The new boilers are in place. They're 90% piped. We're waiting on the unit ventilators. They're scheduled to be in here in about a week and a half, and the company that's installing them is pledged to install 3 to 4 a day, and they'll take whatever time it takes to get them done by August 2nd. So we have no problems. We're just waiting on them, and we knew that when we bid it. We were supposed to get them the first to second week of July. So we feel we're on schedule on that also. Okay, at the high school, this is a little interesting here. That, they're putting the turf that goes in this area right here, and this is a geotech mat that they put down on top of the dirt that was there, and then you can just barely see these black lines right here. Those are drainage pipe that drain into a 15-inch pipe that comes along the perimeter, which will also drain the track. When we build a new track, it'll slope towards this drainage here, which has always been a problem. Okay, they're putting this 6 inches of stone on here, and they're compacting it with this roller. And then this is a picture as of about 1:30 today. So I would say by the end of the week they will be done with this portion of the work. Then they have to put 1.5 inches of sand on top of that to make it smooth and level for the turf. The turf is to be delivered on July the 3rd, and they're trying to decide whether their men want to work over the 4th or not. They think they may work straight through, and that in 2 to 2.5 weeks that'll be 100% complete. To go along with that, you can just barely see on this side a white area from right here to right here. That is the concrete pad for the visitors' bleachers. So we have that. That's 100% completed, and that the bleachers are 90% painted and scraped and ready to go over there. So July the 8th, they will start that area and putting the bleachers in.
Linda had a question about the fence. That's ugly. It's not even bland, is it? It's just ugly.
It's beyond ugly.
Yes, thank you.
And what we want to do is that as part of next year's project, so we see where the monies are. Bob, look, see, see where the monies are. That'll be part of the track.
So we're doing what?
Doing
Replacing,
hopefully.
Taking it down or
Placing it,
painting it or...
It's just, no matter what you do to it, it's ugly. Especially the main one along the street here. Dr. Bohr said we've got to do something with that one, and you can see it easier now that there's nothing there to block it.
I know you probably don't want to hear this, but there are the most, what I would love to see in the future would be some brick columns that would complement the high school.
Yes.
And then iron fencing or aluminum fencing. You've seen that around here, but Kokomo High School
I say Kokomo is where I saw that. It was really, really nice.
You are not going to be around here when
And besides, we may name it after you.
The Bob Coddington Memorial Fence. That's right.
But really, what we would be looking at, and Chad Bolzer is hot on this issue, we may be turning to our alumni to help us fund that kind of project.
Past athletes.
Yeah.
Yes.
There's quite a number there that we could, generate several dollars there, and we want to put some type of an arch or something across the main entrance that says Leibolt Field, and I know the sign that everybody thinks is for sale on eBay. It says Leibolt. That was a joke. We have the sign. We're not selling it. But
I don't know if it makes enough money.
I know. But we wanted to introduce that'd be phase 2, and we definitely have to do something. And as you can see on the east side, the ground is being held up by timbers, and we need to put some kind of retaining wall in there. And we've held the bleachers on the east side back far enough that we'll be able to,
So we have to look at that fence until next year?
yeah.
Well,
Bob?
You can write the check, Linda.
if each, like, class, that'd be a good project for class reunions.
yes,
to
it
put
would.
a column for,
You're absolutely
That
right.
it would be a
You're
really.
absolutely
that
right.
would be-
yeah.
Because they look for things to donate money for.
With the year
As an outstanding alumnus of the system, or of the school, Bob Coddington may take that on.
That's right.
I don't know.
He may make the first pillar.
He may.
We'd have to put a baseball on it, though. We couldn't
That's
put
true.
a football or basketball. I'd put a baseball on it.
We could put a condition in his retirement.
I like the way you think.
This is a picture. We were looking down on the bleachers, just to let you know. This is on the west side. We have to build a retaining wall along this area here and right along where that gentleman's standing, because the bleachers just north of that are recessed down. There's a retaining wall, and we're right on rock. We had to put this sewer line in here, and we're right on the rock.
Wow.
But what I wanted to show you this picture for is that our cement bleachers are back. They're right there. See that stone?
I think that's pretty
Oh.
cool.
They crushed the stone of the concrete,
How cool.
and we made sure that they put it in a separate pile, because they're doing this now when they're tearing down concrete. They're recycling it. And
Put that in
so
baggies and sell it.
we wanted to make sure that we got ours back, and you can find pieces of red paint in it
Oh, that's neat.
and white paint, and that's all under the new slab on the west side, and it's all going to be under this slab on this side. So it was neat that the cement bleachers are back.
I was at an outside stadium where they had done some remodeling, and they had taken pictures during the remodeling and actually laminated them in a way and had them on display around. And it was kind of a cool thing to document what they had gone through. And this is such a major transformation that some kind of documentation out there would be.
We have that.
What we could do with it to make a display outside would be kind of
Chad's
cool.
been taking some pictures on top of Civic Hall.
Oh, really?
Down on the, unfortunately, the cameras that are on, there's one right there on that tower, and one, we had to disconnect those because the power was going through the bleachers. So, but we are taking pictures, and Bridget's taking a lot of pictures too.
Wow.
But, so that is on schedule. That's ahead of schedule. And the bleachers and that, they're right on schedule. So everything that I've shown you tonight, August the 2nd, that's what we're going to make.
Wow. Do we get to christen it?
Well, there will be a dedication.
Yeah, they do want to have a dedication. Where we made the mistake is not having something prior to tearing it out. And Dr. Borf had a good suggestion. Maybe people would want to come in and just get a piece of sod and put in the yard. But when we thought about doing that, the next day the sod was gone. So they hauled it off.
It was nice sod.
I did want to say one thing about our maintenance people, that as I especially, and I'm over at Dennis, I see it quite a bit, but along with the other buildings, even though we have got trucks all over the place and backhoes and dirt and I don't know what all, the grounds and the school buildings themselves just look immaculate this summer. So I think we can.
And to date, this has been a pretty
Really?
big mowing year,
Yes.
too.
Absolutely.
With
Yes,
the rain
it
that we've
has.
had.
This rain's
But they
gonna
look, the buildings and the grounds look really, really nice.
Kristen yesterday.
We'll pass that along.
Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Ron. As always, we appreciate all that you're doing. And now,
We need to get coached from Ron about how to keep projects on time and ahead of time. I don't know how in the world that happens.
we need to
but-
watch him in action.
Wow.
Okay, press conference time.
I'm good, no thanks.
Okay, well, we're moving on to consent items.
On our consent items this evening, we have the approval of the June 12th board meeting and executive session, and the June 20th executive session minutes. Recommendation by Human Resources with an addendum as posted. Recommendation from Accounts Payable. Approval of the Title I Part A grant application. Approval of our Japanese language school agreement. Also, filing of reports on our monthly financials and filing of reports on the summer curricular-related events. Those items I recommend for approval.
Kelly Baumgartner makes the motion.
Second.
Seconded by Suzanne Darengowski. Comments or questions? Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Now it's time for our second public commentary. Anyone from the public wishing to speak? Seeing none, we are ready for our follow-up old business.
I just want to inform the board that the first week of August, the board bargaining team will be meeting with the teachers' bargaining team.
The
First week of August.
first week of August.
August 1st is the beginning of formal bargaining, so we will begin.
Okay, we'll look forward to that. Okay, now we're ready for superintendent and board reports, reflections, celebrations.
Well, I think we should celebrate the state of the school union address because I thought it went really well. And the report itself too, I think, is well done. I like that it's sort of in a magazine format. I think more people will look through it and check out the information, and I hope that they do.
I would just like to comment that we are about to wrap up our summer school. It's been very successful in the third grade academy, and point out that the celebration will be 3 o'clock on Friday at Civic Hall for third grade academy.
Third grade.
3 o'clock. Have they taken their
Tomorrow. Tomorrow.
I read is tomorrow, huh?
Tomorrow morning.
I thought you were singing there for me.
And so
Is that like an immediate
Yeah, I read
feedback?
the
test.
question is,
Or
when
the-
will they take their makeup I read test? And she said that was tomorrow. And I would follow up with that is, will we know pretty soon? And are they counted in our original percentage?
No, they don't adjust our passing percentage. We do, because we want to know what our final amount of passing percentage was, but the state will not adjust that. It will be taken electronically, and within 2 days, we'll have a did not pass list.
Okay, great. So we don't get to up ours when they're, although we probably will. We should make it over 90, I would bet.
It's unfortunate, I think. I mean, we should be able to do that, but I'm not making the rules.
So this is merely for the purpose of determining whether the students pass
Whether they will
on
be
to
retained.
fourth grade.
Correct.
Or retained.
That's right.
But I think we need to celebrate. I mean, a number of the teachers
we
I
do.
talked to indicated they really think we're going to get up over the 90.
That's great.
We should, and those students should be celebrated, too.
Absolutely. For
And
putting
we
in the
have 3
extra-
students who are taking the test for the first time, one who's new to Indiana and 2 who were out ill during the initial assessment. So they wouldn't have been included in our original number either.
Oh, really?
Mhm.
Oh, my goodness. Doesn't seem fair, does it?
Okay, anything else? If not, we are adjourned.